So the next thing we're going to talk about is once you've been through a long interview process and you've now been offered a position in a formal offer letter, and you see the title and you see the salary that you've been offered, and then the question is, what do you do if you are looking for something different than what's in the offer letter? This whole idea of negotiation. So yeah, when you're considering a negotiation, the first thing to understand is that when you get that job offer, your job search is not over at that point. There's still more work to be done. You do have a narrow opportunity where there's an opportunity to negotiate with the employer and to sort of state what your personal objectives are and your preferences in terms of salary. And in order to do that, much of what negotiation entails is all about the preparation going in to a negotiation. It's really has to be well thought through. The presentation itself is important. The preparation going in is more important. So, it's your ability to be objective and manage any emotions that you have about the topic. To certainly understand the employer's perspective. At this point, they are still the buyer. They're still the consumer of you. They've offered you this opportunity to work for them. They see a value in you, and they've made what they think is a fair offer. So a need to understand where they're coming from, very important. And you're going to want to, think through the information that you can use to present your case. So, for example, you've already been through this long process. You, at this point, should know the names of the appropriate decision makers and who you should be negotiating with. At this point, you should be knowing strategy of the company, where it's been, how they're going to, get to the next phase, what their ultimate goal is, and specifically what their strategies are related to the position that you've interviewed for. You'll want to hopefully have found out what has gotten in the way of attaining some of these challenges to this point in the company's history. You want to know if there are any problems. Where are the problems? How are the problems created? What keeps them going? And what needs to be done internally to solve the problems? And can you be that person? You'll want to know about any cultural issues that may have come up in the interview process. Really, why are they going outside to find somebody to fix these problems in the first place? So, you may want to learn that and, find out how long this job has been open. How much pain is this opening causing for this employer? You want to make sure that you know the job description inside and out. You want to know the level of authority that this position will have. You want to know how you measure success. And ultimately, how will this company know that you're the right answer for them? This is all work that you will have done throughout your interview process. You'll also want to know, what is it about this company? Why do people join this company? What makes it a desirable place? How are people treated? Are there unspoken rules that you've picked up as you've talked to people, whether they be in managerial positions or people who might be peers of yours or any employee that works in the company? Have you done your research on the culture? What kind of culture is it in terms of if people make mistakes? Is it a risk-averse culture, or is it one that encourages risk-taking? What a typical week looks like? Do they work ridiculous hours? What those things you're going to really want to know. You're also going to want to know in very clear terms what your value is. Again, through this process, you've established your worth to the employer. They've already now offered you this position. Use your resume and refer back to your accomplishment statements as how you've seen outcomes from your results in the past and how you can be a great payoff to this employer. Your negotiation actually starts in the very beginning when they receive your resume and they start to show interest in you, and you're going to demonstrate your value throughout every contact you have with this employer. throughout the interview process, in your thank you notes, every aspect of it. Also leveraging that worth to the organization is something you need to pick up. Reinforcing your potential contribution based on your past contributions in other situations. And look for ways throughout your interview process of how you can continue to show them how you will be someone who can add value once you start with the company. And you'll be able to do that by even making suggestions to them throughout your process, maybe sending articles of something that might have come up in the interview process, anything that continues to show your value. And of course, researching salary in general, very important. Salary.com is an excellent site. You put your title in there, and it'll give you a bell curve of what the pay scales could look like. You'll want to talk to recruiters. You may want to talk to people in a similar job. Salary can be looking at the job postings. It could be included in that. You could look at your previous salary, although you probably don't want to lean on that one way or another. Obviously you're thinking you'd like to make more, but that, in a sense, what you made in a previous salary may not have a lot of overlap with what they're going to pay you in this job. But the point here is to use as many sources as possible and have a plan about how you're going to go about going into this negotiation. Your objectives are to know the type of work you're looking for in terms of the work and what it generally will pay. You're going to want to know what you can live with, so that if you do accept a job, there's no buyer's remorse. So what goes below reasonable for you? You want to make sure that the job and the salary is something that you could be excited about, and it meets your needs and desires. And you want to make sure that you're energized to be successful personally and professionally. So those are your objectives going in. On the other hand, the employer is sort of has issues around internal and external equity. They may not be able to pay you a lot if they have other people in similar jobs who are not paid at the level that you want. So their internal equity may have may create some barriers to any flexibility that they may have. They want to solve challenges. That's a key here. Is they want to bring somebody in who can solve things for them and impact their bottom line and make an immediate contribution, and obviously be a good return on their investment. In their eyes, they want to find the best person and pay them in a way that's going to help that person stay around. So they do want to keep you. They may have some internal barriers to that, and that's just something that you should know. Keep in the back of your mind. So negotiation is really about thinking about everything in a win-win, as a win-win opportunity. This negotiation process will demonstrate your ability to collaborate and work as a colleague within that organization. You want this to be a win for you and a win for the company, so that everybody feels like they have a good deal. It's really about creating a relationship. It's a negotiation. It's a communication process, and you're building relationships as you go through this. You're going to want to have a clear strategy that shows the win-win, and it must have a rationale from both points of view, not just yours, but the company's point of view is critical as you're proceeding through this. How people act is really a sign of the company to you, and you to them. So it's really a precursor of what it's going to be like to work in this place. So the negotiation process is, whether it works to your advantage or not, really help define the culture for you that you're about to get into. It's always good probe for flexibility and find out how this employer values people. And hopefully, at the end of all this, the goal is to reach an agreement where both sides of the negotiation feel we have a fair process in place. At the end of this all, the best way to convince someone to give you something is to show them why your request is in the person's own best interest. They're the buyer. They're the ones that are making the decision. They're deciding what what they want to pay. So if they're going to pay you more, they need to know the reason for it. And the best thing to do is to explain your reasons why you feel you're worth the money that you're asking for. This is complicated. This is a tough conversation. So in a way, you don't want to have this conversation too early in the process because you're trying to establish your worth. Don't talk about money unless, they know that they want you. I mean, that's, you have no power until you're somebody that they're really considering. It's not really in your best interests to discuss salary. You really don't want to ask an employer until you're offered a position. That's ideal. Sometimes, they're going to put it even in the application process where you have to fill that out. And it's unfortunate that happens. Oftentimes they're using salary as a screen, but it's not in your best interests to do that. And the same holds true for everything: benefits, perks. Your job is to create desire as a candidate, and you really don't want to negotiate until after the offer occurs. And not letting your future salary be based on the previous one. This, depending on your situation, you might be in a position where you probably made a lot of money and maybe you got laid off and you think you're going to get that salary back. That may not happen. And the same in reverse. You maybe took a lower position somewhere and then you're being considered for a position back at the status that you once were. So you don't want to make a salary that's too high define or too low define you. You want to be paid for what you're worth, for what you can do for that company. That's very important to establish that. And preparation is your most critical tool to do that. So be prepared that you're going to get an offer and have a rehearsed response. Be enthusiastic. Express how the opportunity and how this match makes perfect sense to you. Emphasize that it's a big decision, and once a position is offered to you, then set up an in-person meeting to discuss the particulars of the role. It's certainly within your rights to do that. Some believe, and this is probably true, that the best deal rarely comes out immediately, and the thought is that anything can be negotiable. That may be true, that may not be true, but just in the back of your mind, it's possible that there's a lot of aspects that could be negotiable. The salary, the benefits or how benefits are paid, vacation time, stock eligibility, things like that. So you want to try to negotiate for yourself. For example, it's possible if you're using a third-party recruiter, they may not be as upfront about you and your needs and your desires, but you never know. Maybe they could help you. But try to do it yourself. Don't be shy about it, and if possible, negotiate in person. Research has found that a significant amount of people, up to 40% of job seekers, start work at a lower pay than they should because they're just not really good at thinking through strategies related to negotiations. So, again, negotiating from a framework of enthusiasm and cooperation, that's critical. I mean, you need to come across in a very positive way. But you're going to represent your interests. Always remember that the benefits you will bring to the organization constantly emphasize what they get out of the deal. You don't want to seem too eager. But you do, want to, do your best and get in front of somebody who's in a position of power that can negotiate with you. So in this case, start with the hiring manager and see if you can negotiate in person with that person. That makes a lot of sense. You want to only do this one time. You don't want to ask for one thing and then stop and then ask for the next thing and stop. No, have your plan in place up front one time to have this negotiation meeting. Show confidence and emphasize the fact that you're an investment for this company and not just simply an expense to this company. Avoid pushing too hard. Unless you're willing to walk away and just turn your back on a position, you don't want to lose the position for pushing too hard. Use their terminology that you've picked up through your interview process. They probably discussed their values, their culture, their work-life balance, things like that. So, use those terms, their terms, in your negotiation process. And then if you do come to an agreement, make sure that agreement is understood by all parties and that you get it in writing. And be optimistic that something positive is going to come out of this. There are things to consider when going through a negotiation. So there are organizational issues such as reporting relationship. Is that to your benefit or not? Is that something that you can negotiate? The scope of your responsibilities, the authority that you have. Title is something that can be negotiated. Advancement possibilities, where this job can go down the road. So those are things you can consider. Other things would be about the job itself. Does it have administrative support? What kind of computer equipment do you have? What kind of budget do you have for meetings or conferences? Will you have access to a company car? Is there a fee for parking, or can you get compensated for that? Is there a T&E allowance for travel? How much is it? If you're you're taking on a role where you have to deal with clients, that might be particularly important. Same for like expense accounts. Will they pay for your cell phone? That's something, some people have a business phone and a personal phone. If you just have a personal phone for this job, is it something that they'll pay you for in part? Will you have an office? So those are all kinds of things to keep in the back of your mind that you may discuss. Other things, salary and compensation. So base salary is obviously something you can discuss. Your bonus percentages and your annual incentives could be something you can discuss. Commission structures, signing bonuses. That's something, if you're going to do a signing bonus conversation, my feeling on that is if you sort of don't succeed in the other aspects of the salary negotiation, signing bonus could be something you hold to the very end. Buyouts, so you may have a bonus that's dangling at your previous employer, or stock options at your previous employer. So are they willing to buy out those, the money's due you? You can maybe negotiate the timing and frequency of your performance appraisal. So if they put you on an annual cycle, let's say, maybe you can negotiate something sooner once you prove your worth to the company. So that's a possibility. Relocation expenses could be something that you negotiate. Car expenses, and mileage, things like that. What is the amount per mile, or what else will they cover for a car? Also keep in mind that if they have on-site dining, that might be something for you. Is it subsidized, or is that a negotiable point? So other things to negotiate. Stock purchase plans that if they offer these things, always consider this is a part of your total compensation. So you may get an offer that's lower than you want, but if you tally up things like your potential bonuses and your stock plans, and if profit sharing, if that exists, and what they're paying for your benefits, and all these other things we're talking about, you might find that this total compensation package is larger than what you're asking for. So be cognizant of the total compensation package. That's an important point. They may have saving and investment plans. Some are richer than others. 401k matching. Some places may have pensions. Long-term incentives. Equity in the company. Every company is going to be structured differently in what's being offered. But these are all things. Deferred compensation is another interesting one. If you can negotiate a higher salary but not have it paid out until it's down the road, when you maybe have less tax implications. So that's interesting as well. Severance agreements, we can get a little bit into that later, but that's something that you can negotiate up front when you start a company, and outplacement assistance in case something happens with your position. So benefits are, what percentage of the medical plan do they pay for? Do you pay for? What other insurances are available? Your retirement plan, what does that look like? Insurance coverages for life, travel, accident, medical coverage, all this stuff. So telecommuting, that's interesting. What is what is their position on that? Hours flexibility. There are many people who that's flexible hours. If they have family obligations, sometimes that's more important to them than even more vacation time. So something to consider. Other things, club memberships, your annual physical, will they pay for that? Tax planning, vacation time, holidays, payment to go to conferences, professional memberships, sabbaticals, do they offer those things? Gift matching, that's important to some folks. Is there an executive lounge that you have access to? Is there an on-site gym? Are there discount programs that are offered for the company? A lot of interesting things you can talk through. And of course, there's the, which I mentioned briefly about before, there's the whole idea of the employment contract. Are you getting things in writing should something happen? It might sound weird to say I'm talking about negotiating severance and outplacement before I even start with a company, but preparing for that, as if it is a possibility, is not a bad idea. What do the insurance benefits look like after you're terminated? What's continued to cover for how long? If you're coming back to the company to if you're terminated but they use you as a consultant, what will those fees look like? What happens if you've earned commissions but they weren't paid out before your date of termination? What happens to those commissions? Do you keep those? Those are all things to know up front. Looking at things like your non-compete or non-disclosure agreements and making sure you're satisfied with those. These kinds of things, you may need to have some professionals take a look at these agreements to make sure that you're getting proper treatment. So you want to make sure that you have all the information that you need to negotiate. You want to understand and agree to a time frame to respond. Now, typically your time frame is not very great, particularly if you're entry level or mid-career. I mean, you might have a day, maybe two, to kind of work through the offer. In a more senior capacity, you may have longer periods of time. You do have power, but that power starts to get lower as time goes by. So in your mind, we just mentioned all of those things that you can negotiate, but you're not going to negotiate every one of those things. You're going to have to take a look at that list and figure out what's most important to you. And, create yourself a column. What is the element? Column 1 could be, what is the element you want to negotiate? What is your least acceptable level? And what is your most desired level? And you want to know that for all of these items. You're not going to negotiate more than 2 or 3 of these things. So you want to really keep it on what's the most important thing for you. And of course, linking your negotiation on any of these items to their goals and how you're going to help them achieve their goals through your presence in the company. You want to make sure that you're looking at all perspectives. You're looking for common ground. Show them where you're on the same page. Of all of those items that we just mentioned before, make sure that they know where you're happy. What are you in agreement with? Walk in with the good stuff. Let them know where you're together. Show the positives. Show the win-wins. But honestly, if you're not satisfied, you don't have to accept this, right? You don't have to accept the position. But know what you want and know where your compromises can be, right? And practice how you respond to questions. So, you want to have depersonalized answers that show that you are flexible. So if the answer is yes, then great. Say great. If the answer is no, ask a question like, has the company ever done this? Or what has the company ever done in this type of a situation? And appeal to them, based on my experience and my level, how do you see that working for you? Offer them solutions for them to consider. You never know what they'll say yes to. Of course, be patient. You got to take it slow, one step at a time. Take small steps. Take time to discuss this with others. Talk with your spouse, your significant other, your accountant, financial planner. That's somebody who I spoke with in detail in a couple of my situations. Talk to a lawyer. if necessary, before you sign on the bottom line. Always consider when you take this job, what will the future look like with this employer, based on the relationship that you established, good, bad, or indifferent. Never be intimidated by this process. It's a two-way street. If you need time, sleep on it, see how much time you can get. If you get surprised, back off a little bit and ask for more time to think it through. There's no real urgency to have an argument if you're surprised with something. Don't take negative responses negatively. Again, there may be a reason behind. The person in front of you may not have the authority to make a yes decision right away, or there may be other issues like internal equity that they need to consider. So keep all of those things in mind. This is a complicated process. It's not a simple yes and no. You do want to be, your own advocate and be persistent. Again, not pushy. Certainly ask what you want and support it with research. Research meaning what other positions might be paying, on the market, or really, how you see certain results happening once you accept this job. How you see bringing advantage and contribution to this employer. Throughout this process, we said before about show where you're in agreement. Also show where you're making concessions. Actually use the word. Okay, I'll concede on the dental plan. I have no problem paying that. On my own. For example, encourage employers to negotiate with themselves. Get them talking about you. One department might think you're awesome, and they might start selling larger, better on your behalf. That would be a great thing. So certainly consider that. Of course, be sensitive when you can see you're getting nowhere, and know when to stop negotiating. When there is really no flexibility for the hiring manager, it doesn't pay to push beyond certain bounds. So, and all that's going to do is possibly hurt the relationship going forward. So be sensitive to when you think that has occurred, and be patient. Watch out for some negatives that employers may show. They may, if they put you in a situation where multiple departments want you and they start, putting you up for auction, if you will, that's a bad thing, where they're not on the same page. Watch out for the conversations around, geez, we're in a budget crunch right now. That might be true. It might be a tactic. Watch out for intimidation. If you don't take this offer, sort of like that ultimatum thing. Watch the good guy, bad guy things where you think that might lead to nowhere. Be aware of any adverse conditions that you might be walking into, or watch out for things like, you ask for one thing, but they substitute it with another thing that you may not be as interested in. The sort of like the what if scenarios that they might throw at you, which could be good things, they could be bad things. But watch out for those difficult behaviors, because those are, again, you're creating a relationship with the company, they're creating a relationship with you. This process tells you a heck of a lot about what it's like to work for this employer, right? But any of these things, they could be signals of red flags for the organization, so they might make you kind of run away, or you may judge that they're not as bad as you think, right? So, it's very rare as you get through your career that every job offer you get is perfect. Very often it's imperfect. There's something missing. Sort of like, well, the salary is good, but I have a long commute, so do I take the job with the lesser salary and the shorter commute and all those kinds of things, or if you even have choices like that. So things to consider as you're thinking through an imperfect job offer is, how long have you been searching? How much longer do you want this to go on? Is this a job within your field? If you haven't been around, working for a while, so is this a job within your field? If this job will still have you working within your field, it might be wise to accept it, to get you back in the game, if you will. How will this job look on your resume? I mean, that might be something to contemplate. It could be a great stepping stone, maybe. And maybe question yourself to say, I'm calling it imperfect, but is it really imperfect? Sometimes the perfect job, as far as your career is concerned, is maybe not the right fit for your personal life. So you always have to consider that as well. This idea of this culture, the culture of negotiation. Again, it says so much about the relationship that you're walking into. At the end of the day, in a negotiation, the employer really holds the high end of this negotiation. They're the buyer. They're the ones with the power. You know what you can live with. So if you know your range boundaries, you know what's least acceptable and what you want to shoot for. Those got to be in your mind. Both sides do have power. Theirs is the power of the decision making. Your power is your uniqueness. It's how you're going to contribute to their bottom line. It's your experience. It's your context, your knowledge, and possibly other opportunities that you're considering. You do have power. If they have offered you a position, even if it's not the salary you're looking for, they want you, and that alone is power. Again, that power wanes if you hold on too long. But that is power, and you can use that to your advantage. Really, you're never going to have more negotiating power than when this offer is on the table. So this is really your time to ask. Once you've accepted a position, the negotiation is no longer possible. So take your time. Take your day, 2 days, 3 days. Take your time, work through it, but use your power when you have your power. So this is, I guess, in summary. So once you receive an offer and you have all the pertinent information, agree on when you're going to respond for this offer, and buy time if you need it. Make sure that you understand any implications to your negotiation, if there's any grandfathering issues, meaning. Say if policies change, are you going to be considered part of the policy that you accepted, or will your policy change along with everybody else's? That's good to know, especially when you're talking in that contract letter. That's something that you might want to negotiate along with your potential severance and things like that. And be prepared to walk away. If you're not comfortable, just be careful. Know the implications, and what you're walking away from, but understand the implications to you. So simple summary rules to follow: never negotiate until the sale is made. That's number one. Avoid discussions about money if at all possible. Make sure that they have earned the right to have that conversation with you. Certainly express vulnerability, and in this case, that the decision is in their hands. So make sure that they know that you know that. Probably try not to commit to an offer once you get it. Take the day if you have to, even if you're going to definitely accept it. You might say, "Thank you very much. I really appreciate this. I just have a few things I want to discuss at home or think about. Would you mind if I gave you a call tomorrow?" This is even if you're totally interested in the role. It's not a bad idea to do that. Maybe something around job responsibilities could be something that you might want to follow up on or talk about. So, but regardless of what you do, make sure that you're using enthusiasm throughout the process. I'm going to end this with the idea of what is a we space, talking about this whole idea of the culture of negotiation. It really is moving from you and me to we. If you put this into a sale, a seller-buyer scenario, prospective employers or sellers, whichever, whether you're a customer or a potential employee, the point is they trust each other. The point is to get each other to trust each other and be honest with each other and to communicate in a way that's uniquely yourself. You're creating this positive relationship that's going to help both of you succeed down the road. You want to make sure that you're establishing that rapport, which will help you succeed down the road, and build this relationship of trust and collaboration, and one where all of the things that you've been discussing throughout the whole process, that there's a congruity between the values that are expressed, their values and your values, and that you're able to behave in ways that represent the values that you both share. So with that, I hope this was helpful in terms of understanding negotiating salary, and I appreciate your time in this presentation. Thank you.